Discover the incredible moment my daughter through coffee, unveiling a hidden life-changing lesson. On a bright Saturday morning, the sun lit up our little suburban town, illuminating Mia's homemade coffee stand. The air was thick with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee, sweetened by the chatter of friendly neighbors. I stood behind her, pride swelling in my chest as I saw my spirited daughter, just 10 years old, embracing her dreams of independence and responsibility. But then it happened. Mrs. Whitaker, our snooty neighbor with more money than kindness, strolled by. She glanced at Mia's quaint stand, her lips curled into a sneer. "What a joke," she scoffed. "Do you really think anyone would buy coffee from a child?" The cruel laughter erupted around us. In that moment, the strong bond of our tight-knit community felt like it was fraying, a seam threatening to unravel. Mia's eyes, bright with dreams, suddenly dimmed. My heart twisted as I watched her brow furrow. She stood frozen, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. And then, in a flash of anger, she hurled a cup of coffee not at Mrs. Whitaker, but at the ground. A splash of dark liquid sprayed across the pavement, surprising those around us and igniting gasps of shock. It felt like a bomb dropped nearby. The stunned silence that followed was heavy. Whispers erupted, like leaves rustling in a sudden windstorm. The vibrant energy of the morning soured in an instant. I could barely believe it. My little girl had made a statement, but at what cost? The townsfolk were divided. Some eyed her with pity, others with disdain, and I felt an overwhelming tightness in my chest. I needed to step in, but how? Before I could catch her, Mia ran to the back of the stand, tears streaming down her cheeks. I hurried over, wrapping my arms around her small frame, wishing I could shield her from the cruel reality of the world. "Mia," I said softly, "it's okay to feel hurt, but remember who you are. You're creative and brave, and this is just a moment." Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. But as the days dragged on, the chatter didn't die down. The incident hung in the air, thick like fog. People took sides, either sympathetic to Mia or condemning her. I felt a heavy burden of shame not for what Mia had done, but for how easily people turned against a child. I wanted to shelter her, to help her understand that growth often comes from the bruises of our toughest experiences. Yet how could I teach her that lesson without exposing her to pain? Then an unexpected ray of hope emerged. I learned from an old friend at the grocery store about Mr. Thompson, a neighbor I vaguely remembered. He'd helped my father during hard times, a piece of our family legacy I hadn't even known existed. Perhaps there was more to this town than I thought, threads of connection weaving us together tighter than any rumor that could tear us apart. As the upcoming street festival grew closer, excitement bubbled through the neighborhood, a chance to unite after the scandal. The festival could be our turning point, a moment for Mia to shine again, to show her love for art and community. I could feel the anticipation mounting, mixed with anxiety, hoping the townsfolk would see the true heart of not just Mia, but of all of us. Would this festival bring us back together? But as I pondered all these things, one thought loomed largest. Could we turn humiliation into healing? Could Mia's courage redefine our place in this community? The answers felt distant, but we had no choice but to try. As I looked at Mia, determination on her face, I knew we were about to embark on a journey that would change everything. The street festival dawned with a burst of colors and sounds that seemed to shake off the shadows lingering from the previous weeks. Banners waved in the gentle breeze, and laughter echoed from booths filled with crafts and baked goods. The town was alive, and for Mia and me, it felt like a fresh start, a chance to stitch the fabric of our community back together. Mia stood at our booth, her face painted bright with optimism. She had spent the past week transforming her coffee stand into a vibrant showcase of what she loved. Hand-painted signs adorned with hearts and sunflowers announced her special blends, magic mocha and dreamy caramel. My heart fluttered with pride. This was more than a coffee stand. It was a reflection of her spirit. As the festival reached its peak, families gathered around us, drawn by the inviting aroma of fresh coffee and the enthusiasm radiating from Mia. She poured each cup with care, chatting warmly with everyone, her laughter ringing out like a melody. It was magical to watch her connect with people, to witness the sparkle return to her eyes. But even in a moment of joy, I could feel the weight of that past incident lurking just beneath the surface. Mrs. Whitaker was strolling nearby, her presence unmistakable. I caught sight of her disdainful glances, but instead of crumbling, I found strength in Mia's laughter. She was determined to show everyone who she really was. "Mia," I called out, wiping my brow as I wiped down the counter, "how about sharing your story? Your art brought you this far. Maybe it could inspire others." She paused, her eyes wide as if the thought had never crossed her mind. "You think so?" "Absolutely. You turned a hard moment into a beautiful one. People need to hear how you did it." With a deep breath, Mia climbed onto an improvised platform, her little heart dancing with nerves and excitement. All eyes turned to her, curiosity shimmering in the crowd. My own heart raced. This was a vulnerable moment for her. Would they listen? "Hi, everyone." Her voice rang out, bright and clear. "I'm Mia. A few weeks ago, I didn't think anyone would believe in my coffee. I got sad and mad, and I spilled some coffee, but my mom reminded me that it's okay to feel. So I painted and I made the stand." The crowd was silent at first, and I almost held my breath. But then, a gentle hum began to ripple through the audience, mixed with smiles and nods of encouragement. Mia continued, recounting her story with honest passion, her words weaving a thread of connection with every person who listened. As she spoke, I saw Mrs. Whitaker's expression soften. Maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to see the beauty in Mia's spirit rather than the failure of a moment. When Mia finished, the crowd erupted into applause. Tears prickled at the edges of my eyes. My daughter was blossoming, and in her courage, she had opened the hearts of those around her. But with the joy came a question. Would this shift truly last? Would the love from today hold firm tomorrow? As the applause faded, I realized the road ahead was still unwritten, filled with both risk and hope. "Mia," I murmured as I hugged her, "you did so well. But do you think they really heard you?" She smiled up at me, determination in her voice. "I think they know I'm more than just a spilled cup of coffee." And, just like that, I understood. It was time to embrace this journey together, to face whatever came next as a family, as a community. As we watched the crowd slowly disperse, a new thought blossomed in my mind. What did tomorrow hold for both Mia and me? Before I could finish, a familiar figure approached us with a hesitant smile. It was Mr. Thompson, and he had a question that could change everything. Mr. Thompson approached with an intrigued look on his face. I could see he was wrestling with his words, as if unsure how they would land. This was a man who had lived in the town long enough to witness both its joys and its struggles. I felt my pulse quicken, the tension of the moment wrapping around us. "Mia," he began, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose, "you really spoke from the heart up there. It's inspiring to see someone who can turn a mistake into something beautiful." Mia grinned, her eyes sparkling with pride, yet there was a flicker of uncertainty. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I wanted everyone to know it's okay to feel sad sometimes." He nodded slowly, clearly reflecting on her words. "You know, many of us sometimes forget that. We put ourselves in these boxes of perfection. It's refreshing to hear you embrace your feelings. It made me think maybe I've been too stiff in my own life." She tilted her head, curiosity written all over her face. "What do you mean?" As he spoke, I felt that same sense of connection swell between them. "Well, I've been teaching for years, and I always push my students to be their best. But in doing so, I think I've lost sight of the importance of vulnerability. Maybe I need to let them see my mistakes too." Mia stepped closer to him, her voice sincere. "You could tell them about your favorite cake recipe that didn't work out. Or a time you felt nervous on stage. His eyes widened in realization, and a warm smile broke across his face. You know that's a great idea. I should share those moments more. It might help them feel free to express themselves. A ripple of awe moved through me. Here was a man who had spent years in front of classrooms, guiding students, but now found a new perspective through the innocence and courage of my daughter. Mia could connect dots that seasoned adults struggled to find. Before I could fully absorb the shift in atmosphere, I noticed a group of children nearby, gathered around a face-painting station. Their laughter pierced through the chatter, a sweet reminder of youthful joy untainted by burdens. Mia glanced over and turned back to us, eyes gleaming with mischief. Can we do face painting next, Mom? I want to bring colors to everyone's faces. I laughed, her enthusiasm infectious. Of course. Let us make this festival even brighter. As we began prepping for the next activity, I caught sight of Mrs. Whitaker at the edge of the crowd, arms folded tightly, observing. There was a flicker of disapproval in her eyes, but this time, Mia's light seemed to drown out her shadows. I found myself wondering how much power we held in changing perceptions. If Mia could inspire Mr. Thompson, could she chip away at Mrs. Whitaker's hardened exterior? Mia, I said, feeling bold, if we can reach one heart today, we can reach many. You think we can help Mrs. Whitaker too? Mia paused, studying the woman from a distance. I hope so, Mom. Everyone needs colors, even if they don't know it yet. Her innocence struck a chord deep inside me. Could we really turn a frown into a smile? Could we paint over the sadness that was stitched into the fabric of our lives, one cup of coffee and one splash of color at a time? Let us find out, I replied, a surge of determination igniting in my chest. As we gathered the supplies for face painting, the town buzzing around us, I realized we were just beginning this journey. But then, from the crowd emerged a dark figure I hadn't expected, someone who had been absent for far too long. Would their return bring more wounds, or could it lead to healing? The atmosphere shifted as the figure pushed through the crowd, tall and imposing. I recognized him instantly. It was David, my estranged brother. His presence felt like a thunderstorm rolling in, unexpected and charged with tension. Mia, I whispered, my heart racing. Stay close. Mia didn't seem to grasp the weight of his arrival. She bounded over to the face-painting table, her giggles like sunlight breaking through clouds. The colors in her tiny hands brought joy that contrasted sharply with the turmoil rising in my chest. As David approached, the crowd parted, some faces turning to, well, stare. Whispers like flickering candles spread through the air. What was he doing back? After all this time? I felt anger and hurt rise together, coiling inside me. Hey, David said, his voice uncertain but deep, his gaze sweeping over the festival. I thought I'd come see. He trailed off, eyes landing on Mia. Mia, I called, trying to keep the tremor from my voice. Don't wander too far. She turned, bright and unbothered. Look, Uncle David. We're going to do face painting. Want to join? His expression shifted instantly. Where once there was doubt, a softness crept in, as if she were a balm to the scars between us. I think that'd be fun, he said, hesitating only a moment. Mia dashed back toward him, pulling his hand toward the table. A wave of surprise washed over me. It was like watching a flower bloom from concrete. Could this man, who had stirred so much pain, really want to connect? I stood watching, torn between hope and 1,000 questions. David knelt down to Mia's level, and she handed him a brush with glee. What color do you want? She chirped. How about blue? Yes, she giggled, dipping the brush into a bright azure paint. That's my favorite. It's like the sky. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Mia's laughter filled the void between my brother and me. I found myself holding my breath, heart racing, waiting for a shift, a change. The blue soon morphed onto his face, a quirky, swirly design that made him smile, one that I didn't know he could have. Kids squealed nearby, completely unaware of the complications hovering like a fog around us. But Mrs. Whitaker still stood at the edge, her eyes narrowed, witnessing this painfully beautiful moment unfold. Would she comment? Would she intervene with her sharp tongue? I held my breath, ready to defend against whatever might come next. Eventually, David stood up, grinning at Mia, who nodded in approval. Looks good, right? I'd never seen him so open, so carefree. Suddenly, Mrs. Whitaker stepped forward, crossing the threshold of her disapproval. She glanced at David, her lips pursed. I've seen enough of these games, she declared, a frown creasing her face. David seemed taken aback, but held his ground. It's just a little fun, he replied, a hint of defiance in his tone, as if daring her to challenge him further. And as the tension thickened, I realized we were standing on the precipice of something more than just a festival. Could this small moment of joy bring a bridge where there had only been landmines before? Mia turned again, a wild sparkle in her eyes. Can I paint your face next, Mrs. Whitaker? A pause. Silence frozen in time. Would she accept the color? Would she let herself be drawn in? As she opened her mouth to respond, I held my breath, waiting for the answer that would either pull or push us all into the light. Would this day mark the end of an old hurt or just the beginning of new wounds? A hush fell over the festival as Mrs. Whitaker's lips parted, surprise flickering across her face. For a second, I felt the world narrow to just her, a woman too often tethered to rules instead of joy. She looked at Mia, then back at David, weighing her choices like an old scale, each side heavy with history. I suppose she began, her voice steady but hesitant, a little paint wouldn't hurt. Mia's eyes sparkled with delight. Yay! She squealed, holding the brush like it was a magic wand. As Mrs. Whitaker approached, the crowd seemed to hold its breath. A stirring of whispers floated around us like dry leaves in the wind. I stood rooted, watching two sides of a coin meet for the first time, the anticipation thick enough to slice through. David took a step back, still smiling, though a hint of uncertainty shadowed his expression. This moment meant something. It was the first time I'd seen him engage with Mia's world, with hope instead of distance. The swirls of blue paint adorned his cheeks, capturing the innocence of childhood that had long been dimmed in our family. Mia stood up on her tiptoes, eager to get to work. Are you ready, Mrs. Whitaker? She beamed, her innocence radiating like sunlight. The older woman nodded, a hint of a smile breaking the reservoir of her usual sternness as she squatted down to allow Mia better access. The paintbrush danced across Mrs. Whitaker's face, and laughter bubbled up like soda fizzing out of a bottle. I held my breath, tears blinking against my eyelids as I witnessed this unexpected transformation. An elderly woman, often the festival's enforcer, now giggled as she became a butterfly in Mia's colorful world. Look, David said, his voice breaking through my thoughts, that's beautiful. When I dared to look at him, I found a newfound light there, like the weight of years had lifted just a little. It was as if the joy in Mia, so effortless and pure, had reached him, guiding him back from the shadows of his past and into the warmth our family had once shared. The crowd began to dissipate, some taking photos, others mingling just a few feet away. Mrs. Whitaker transformed into a canvas of bright colors, laughter dancing in the air like confetti, chasing away the dark clouds that always seemed to loom. I felt myself relaxing just a bit, inching toward forgiveness. All it takes is a brush and the courage to color outside the lines, David said softly, glancing at me as though he was sharing a secret. Mia stomped her feet in excitement. Now you both have to get your faces painted. I chuckled, the sound feeling foreign yet freeing. It was good fun, even to let life unfold for a moment. But there was still a tightness in my chest. Memories I hadn't fully reckoned with lingered at the edges of my mind. As Mia turned to fetch more colors, the weight of the past grew heavy once more. I caught David's eye again, searching for understanding, ready to address the words unspoken between us. But before I could gather the courage, Mrs. Whitaker's expression shifted back to her familiar sternness as she wiped the paint off her hands. Kids these days, they don't know how to behave. My heart dipped, and I felt the tension rise again. The moment of brightness felt fragile. Would we lose it all? As I turned to David, wanting to bridge the gap and talk, I couldn't shake the feeling that just as quickly as joy bloomed, it could also wither away. Could we hold on to this moment, or were we destined to fall back into our old patterns? I could feel it in the air. Something was coming. Something that could either destroy or unite us. I needed to know where we really stood together or apart. And just then, before I could frame my next question, I saw the flicker of conflict in David's eyes. What would he share? What hidden truths lay waiting beneath the surface? Mia was still buzzing with excitement, her cheeks flush with joy as she mixed colors with gusto. The energy around us crackled, a blend of uncertainty and hope. But just as I began to feel some sense of liberation, a loud crash jolted me from my thoughts. The festive atmosphere shattered as a table laden with mugs tipped over. Coffee splashed everywhere, drenching everything and sending festival-goers into a flurry of concern. Glasses clinked and shouts of surprise filled the air. "Mia, stay back," I shouted, gripping her shoulder just as she was about to rush toward the chaos. My heart raced. I didn't want her to get caught up in the frenzy. "Look," David exclaimed, pointing down to where a woman in a bright yellow sundress, sipping from a mug that had clearly been too close to the edge, stood frozen in shock. Coffee dripped down her dress, but instead of panic, there was an odd spark of defiance in her eyes. "Maybe this time we could actually do something about our messes," she said loudly, her voice cutting through the noise. Instead of complaining, her boldness struck a chord I hadn't expected, catching even Mrs. Whitaker off guard. The older woman's brow furrowed as she looked back toward the woman, who now wore a coffee-stained smile. It was captivating, someone willing to challenge the usual monotony. "Do something?" Mrs. Whitaker's voice rang out, sharp but intrigued. "Yes. Instead of lamenting over spilled coffee, let's clean it up together. Life's too short to cry over minor mishaps." The woman's laughter mingled with her words, a sound so infectious that it paused the surrounding chaos for just a moment. I felt the held breath of the crowd release. The tension eased, laughter began to ripple, spreading like wildfire as people started grabbing napkins and towels. Even Mrs. Whitaker couldn't help but chuckle, a lightness breaking through the layers of her habitual sternness. "That's the spirit," Mia shouted, clapping her hands. She was radiating a joy that I had nearly forgotten in the midst of all this. I couldn't help but smile, genuinely this time. There was something bigger happening. Walls were breaking, connections forming, and it had little to do with the paint on faces or spilled coffee. It was the spirit of community rising, a lesson in resilience and adaptability. As I glanced at David, I noticed that the flicker of conflict in his eyes had transformed. There was something else there now: curiosity, openness, maybe even a hint of admiration for this woman who had turned a mishap into an opportunity for camaraderie. "Mia," I said, kneeling down to her level, "this is what life is about. It's not just the moments of joy but how we respond to chaos. Sometimes we paint with colors, sometimes we clean up spills together. Each moment teaches us something." David joined in, looking directly at Mia. "You know, courage isn't just about leaps and bounds. Sometimes it's as simple as standing together with your community, no matter what spills come our way. Or finding magic in the mess," I added, and we exchanged a smile. Mia's eyes sparkled with a deeper understanding now, and she nodded vigorously. But as we turned to join the growing group embracing this chance to unite, I caught a glimpse of tension flickering at the edges of David's smile. Would this newfound whimsy last? Was there a lesson here that we both needed to learn beyond just today? Just then, a loud thud caught our attention. A nearby artist's stand had buckled under the excitement, sending canvases tumbling. David's expression grew serious, and I turned to him, sensing that his mind was racing, ready to reveal the deeper truths beneath his cheerful facade. What would he say now, in the wake of chaos? Would we fall apart, or could this moment reshape everything? The canvases lay strewn across the ground, colors blending in chaotic patches. David moved toward the fallen artwork, brows knitted in concentration. I sensed a shift in him, something deeper than just concern for the artists. It was as if the spilled coffee and crumpled paintings were echoes of his own hidden struggles. "Mia, stay close," I said gently, watching David kneel to inspect a piece that had caught his eye. "Look at this one." He called to us, his voice rising above the murmur of cleanup efforts. "It's amazing despite being on the ground." Mia skipped over, her previous worries forgotten. "It's still beautiful." she exclaimed, her small fingers trailing through the mess of paint splatters. But David wasn't just admiring the art. I could see him wrestling with something unspoken. His shoulders tensed, as if the weight of the situation was pressing down on him. I approached cautiously, sensing this was a moment where something important was about to unfold. "David," I said softly, "what's on your mind?" He looked up, the corner of his mouth twitching in a half-smile, but his eyes were guarded. "There's more to art than just what's on display, you know?" "Yes, it's what it makes us feel," Mia chimed in, nodding, her excitement palpable despite the chaos around us. "Exactly," David replied, his gaze lingering on the mess of canvases. "Art reflects life, messy and chaotic. It reminds us that even in the chaos, there's beauty." "But—" his voice faltered slightly, and I felt a lump in my throat as I waited for him to find the words. "Sometimes, we hide from our own messes. Instead of facing them, we just pretend everything is okay. We think if we can make a masterpiece out of our problems, it'll just magically work out," he continued, his tone growing heavier. Mia's little brows furrowed. "But what if it doesn't work out? Like today with the coffee?" "Then we clean it up," David said firmly, standing up now, dusting his hands together as if he was shedding a layer of weight. "Together. Just like we are now, right?" The crowd around us seemed to hesitate, a moment of unity unfolding in the aftermath of the chaos. It struck me how liberating it felt to admit that life was messy. David's words hung between us, encouraging this strange kinship that had blossomed. As we all busily participated in picking up the remnants of the artist's display, I felt a warmth radiate out from David. It was a realization as he began to reflect on the very aspects of life we had avoided. "Mia, it's okay if we don't have it all together," I said, kneeling down beside her to connect with her big, innocent eyes. "Sometimes, the mess teaches us more than the perfect picture. And we learn to embrace that, we become stronger." "I like that." Mia beamed, pulling her arms around my neck, innocent joy radiating from her. I caught David's eye, and we shared a smile. In that brief connection, I saw it understanding woven through our shared experience and the growth we were all wrestling with. But the moment was cut short when sounds of upset swept through the crowd. A loud argument erupted near the drink station. "This is just unacceptable," someone shouted. We turned, watching as two people confronted each other over the chaos, voices rising above the laughter and music that still played faintly nearby. "Is there more turmoil waiting to unravel?" David asked quietly, his expression darkening as he silently wondered what other layers of tension lay beneath the festival's facade. I felt a sense of dread as I watched the confrontation escalate, the uplifting moment we had shared at the brink of being overshadowed by yet another drama. How would we respond this time? Would the bonds we had started to form withstand another wave of chaos? What if it all falls apart? I whispered, meeting David's concerned gaze. Before I could think further, the argument reached a peak, a splinter crack of anger slicing through the atmosphere. What would happen next? The shouts became sharper, echoing like thunder in the already charged atmosphere. I could feel the energy shift among the small crowd. People paused mid-conversation, their laughter fading into whispers. "What's going on?" Mia asked, her voice a mixture of curiosity and unease. She clung to my arm, sensing the tension. David stepped forward, driven by an impulse to intervene. "Let's just take a breath," he began, his hands raised in a peaceful gesture, but it barely pierced the wall of anger building between the two individuals. The first voice, a woman with wild hair and streaks of paint on her clothes, seemed to be the center of the storm. "I don't care about your excuses," she yelled. "You ruined everything for all of us." The other, a man with clenched fists, retorted, "What makes you think I'm to blame? I didn't spill the coffee." I watched as they squared off, their eyes blazing. I felt a ripple of fear. How quickly we can forget the mess we just cleaned. "David," I called out, worry creeping into my voice. "Please don't get involved." But he paused, looking back at me. His expression was conflicted, an internal battle playing out on his face. "Sometimes it's worth stepping in." Just then, a nearby onlooker, a young woman who had been nervously biting her nails, stepped forward. "Maybe we can all just take a moment?" Her voice was soft, but firm, a calm in the brewing storm. And somehow, against the backdrop of rising tensions, her words hung in the air like a breath of fresh air. The arguing parties turned slightly, distracted by this unexpected interruption. "Mia," I whispered, crouching down to her level, "stay close, okay?" The little girl nodded, her eyes wide as she surveyed the chaotic scene unfolding before us. "Being angry doesn't help," the young woman continued. "Can we talk this out instead of shouting?" There was a beat of silence, a moment where everyone held their breath, waiting to see if her words would take root. Slowly, the man's shoulders dropped. "Fine," he said, although his tone was still laced with irritation. "Let us talk then." I noticed David's gaze soften. He stepped back, but remained nearby, ready to support. The crowd seemed to reshape itself, moving closer to hear better as the tension began to dissolve, if only slightly. As the woman and man began to discuss, their words less aggressive, I caught a glimpse of the powerful moment wellness can spring from vulnerability. Everybody was part of the same ocean of emotion, fluctuating between anger and understanding. "Mia, look." I pointed to the scene. "See how they're trying to work it out? Just like we did when we picked up the art." She nodded, her innocence grasping something profound. "Everyone feels things differently, right?" "Yes, exactly." I felt a warmth in my chest, heart swelling with pride. It was in that moment I realized how resilience was born from togetherness. But just as a sense of calm began to wash over the crowd, another loud crash broke through. Someone had knocked over the drink station, sending paper cups flying and lemonade splashing everywhere. "What now?" I groaned, glancing at David, who was now wide-eyed. "There's always more to contend with, isn't there?" He replied, a hint of amusement creeping back into his expression, but the underlying concern was still present. Mia sighed, leaning against my side. "Why can't everyone just be nice?" Before I could answer, I saw the determination flare in David's eyes. "Let us help clean up again. Let us show them how we respond to messes." I felt a surge of energy. This would be a teaching moment. But as I turned to engage the crowd, the atmosphere still tangled with emotions. I wondered how we would react when the next storm hit us. What if we faced more than just spilled drinks? What if, in that messiness, we uncovered truths we weren't ready to confront? Before I could fully process my thoughts, I saw the spill spreading like a bright yellow river across the pavement. The crowd that had gathered was frozen in place, eyes darting between the chaos of cups tumbling and juice splattering everywhere. "All right, everyone," I called out, my voice rising over the commotion. "Let us get this cleaned up." There was a moment of hesitation, then David moved to help me, his willingness infectious. Mia looked up at me, confusion etched on her face. "Are you sure we can fix it?" "It's a big mess." "Of course we can. It just takes a little teamwork," I assured her, beckoning the nearby onlookers to join in. Slowly, people began to step forward, some grabbing napkins, others collecting cups. The tension from earlier gave way to laughter and light-hearted banter. I could see the wild-haired woman and the man still conversing, their energy shifting from angry shouts to mild chuckles as they joined the cleanup too. "Mia," I said, gathering a handful of sticky napkins, "do you see how we're all working together? We help each other out, just like the art project." She nodded, sinking into that rare bubble of understanding, her small hands taking action as well. Picking up a cup, she announced proudly, "I'm helping." I glanced at David, who was grinning as he tossed a cup into the trash. "This is what it looks like when people come together," he said, wiping his brow. "And messy situations can lead to something good." And there it was, the bridge between the argument and the cleanup was unmistakable now. People were smiling, joking as they worked. It felt like a small community transformation, each person contributing, finding common ground despite whatever drama might have flared moments earlier. But as we cleaned, the conversation between the woman and the man shifted again. "You know," she said, her voice winding through the laughter, "I didn't mean to blow up like that." "It's just, yeah, I get it," he cut in. "I've been stressed about the whole project. We're all in this together." I could see the guards they had put up earlier starting to ease, replaced by an understanding that hung in the air. Mia glanced at me, her eyes bright. Do you think they're going to be friends now? Maybe, I replied, pulling a wet napkin from my pocket. I felt a flicker of hope. It's possible. Sometimes, sharing a tough moment can create a deeper bond. And just as we started feeling the warmth of unity, something caught my eye, a flash of movement near the drink station. A boy about Mia's age was wrestling with a large box that had somehow fallen, and it started to topple over. I rushed towards him, instinctively reaching out to steady it. "Watch out!" the boy shouted. Before I could react, the box tipped, spilling a mess of fruit punches and syrups all over the ground, setting off an explosion of colors splattering everyone nearby. Shouts erupted, laughter turned into squeals, and I felt my heart sink at the sight. "Not another mess," whoops, Mia giggled, amusement flooding her innocent voice. David's eyes widened, but he broke into laughter, clutching his stomach, caught up in the chaos. I couldn't help but chuckle too. And then it hit me, maybe this was the moment I was worried about. The one that would expose deeper issues between us all. But perhaps this was also the moment where we would embrace the chaos and, in doing so, discover an even deeper understanding. "All right, folks," I called as I wiped syrup off my cheek, feeling the sweet stickiness cling to my skin. "Looks like we have more work to do. Who's with me?" The crowd erupted in cheers, ready to tackle yet another mess together. Little did I know, this seemingly pointless cleanup had much more significance than I anticipated. What truths would emerge once we started cleaning up this next wave of chaos? Would the ties we formed become even stronger? As the sticky syrup pooled around our feet, there was a shift in the atmosphere. Laughter echoed, mingling with chatter as people reached for napkins, their hands getting messy while we all scrambled to help. This was bigger than any one incident. It was a living portrayal of our community's spirit, of how we could transform chaos into togetherness. "Let us make this a game," Mia shouted, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Whoever cleans the most gets a gold star." Her enthusiasm was infectious. In moments, people were laughing, taking turns to see who could pick up the most cups or wipe down the widest patch. Even the woman and the man who had argued just moments before were now laughing side by side, sharing jokes as they gathered soggy napkins. "That's how it's done," David cheered, glancing at me. The brightness in his eyes was a mirror of the joy around us. I felt a warmth spread through my chest, realizing how far we had come. Each spill, each mishap, was becoming a lesson. Mia stood in the midst of it, her laughter ringing out. "We're like a team," she exclaimed. "And teams are awesome." "Exactly," I called out, grinning at her as I joined in with the group gathering cups. "Mia, you're leading the way." The mess gradually transformed. It was no longer just spilled syrup. It was an opportunity for connection. I could already see Mrs. Whitaker wandering closer, a hesitant smile flickering on her lips as she observed all the children, adults, and even artists uniting over this playful chaos. "Maybe next year, we should set up a messy station, just for fun," someone suggested, and the crowd erupted in laughter. As we cleaned, I caught David's eye and motioned toward Mia. "She's really something, isn't she?" "Yeah," he nodded, a reflective seriousness replacing the earlier lightness. "She's opened my eyes in ways I didn't expect." As my heart swelled, I realized this gathering was a pivotal moment for us all. Every laugh shared pierced through the heaviness we had all felt in recent weeks. Even Mrs. Whitaker moved in closer, hands busy collecting trash. "See?" I whispered to David. "Just like we talked about. Sometimes, vulnerability can lead to friendship." He turned toward me, a curious glimmer in his eyes. "Do you really think Mrs. Whitaker can change?" I glanced over at her, now engaging with others in the crowd. Her smile was tentative, but her willingness to help, however small, was a step toward bridging gaps that had existed for far too long. Change takes time, but we have to start somewhere. As we shared our thoughts, I felt a gentle tug on my shirt. It was Mia, her paint-splattered hands reaching up, eyes wide with joy. "Mom, can I keep one of the cups? It can remind me to always have fun, even when things get messy." A burst of laughter escaped me. "Of course, sweetheart. We can decorate it together later." Just then, amidst the laughter and camaraderie, I caught sight of the young woman who had started the peaceful intervention earlier, now helping a neighbor collect cups. "Look, everyone," she shouted. "Instead of just a cleanup, how about we turn this into a celebration of our resilience? Let us have a little color run." Cheers erupted in response, and everyone began grabbing the remaining syrups to add color to the occasion. My heart raced as I exchanged incredulous glances with David. "This is insane, but in the best way." "Yeah," he laughed. "Let us do it." As people began to gather colorful drinks and devised a plan to fill cups with vibrant concoctions, I felt the tightness in my chest loosen even more. This was a celebration of spirit, of connection forged through earthiness and chaos. As the first splash of color went flying, I turned to Mia, who was already anticipating the fun. "You did this, you know," I told her, watching as her excitement blazed a trail through the crowd like wildfire. "I just wanted to have a party," she shouted back, eyes twinkling. "Then let's have the best party ever," I cried, raising my hands to rally everyone around. Picking up a snack, I set it down as we all began tossing colorful drinks into the air, laughter swirling around us in torrents. In that moment, it was less about the mess and more about the connections being forged, the colors signaling our unity against anything life threw at us. And there I saw it happen. Mrs. Whitaker joined in, a splash of vibrant color landing on her wrist, eliciting a surprised laugh that echoed through the crowd. Everyone was in it together now. The festival morphed into a tapestry of vivid colors, joy, and connection that could hardly be captured in words. This was more than a street festival. This was a lesson in resilience, an affirmation that through even our messiest moments, we could stand strong and paint our world anew. As I looked at Mia, covered in laughter and color, I couldn't help but feel overwhelmed with gratitude. Here we were, creating memories that would last. But even through all the joy, a thought lingered in my mind. Would we carry this renewed sense of community with us beyond today? And as I leaned down to scoop Mia into my arms, I knew we were ready to embrace whatever came next together. Just then, David caught my eye. "You know," he whispered, a hint of warmth back in his tone, "maybe life is more about those small connections than perfect moments after all." "Yes," I replied, heart swelling. And today was just the beginning. As we laughed, splashed, and painted the town in every vibrant shade we could imagine, I felt a tingle of hope for whatever awaited us tomorrow. And that when it hit me, life is about finding joy through the chaos and changes it brings, and I knew we'd continue to paint our story, one colorful moment at a time. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like right now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. We can't do this without you. Comment below with your feelings about this inspiring ending and share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to spread the love.